And also she's the founder and I would say the engine behind French Connection that brought it to the global brand it became. So she just mentioned French Connection. What was it like, Nikole, knowing that your input, your creativity, your stamp is making such an impact on ready-to-wear on a global stage with shops and people wearing your clothes worldwide?
I never realized the impact. Of course, I knew we were dressing because I could see the orders were by hundred thousands of pieces, which was incredible for a blouse. For me, the pleasure was in drawing the clothes, in finding the fabric. I was not attached to the business of the company. I was enjoying my life as a designer and being able to make clothes that people would like to wear. That was the excitement, really.
And French Connection has a very unique look. And in one of your interviews, you mentioned how you brought in a lot of your style from your mom and I think the women who influenced you into your collections. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I think my mother actually influenced me more when I started my own company, Nikole. Because my mother was always dressed in trousers and shirts and blazer, and it became really a stamp for me because although I regretted when I was young that she was never wearing a dress or a skirt, when I started my own company, I became very well known for my trousers, my shirts, and my sweaters, and I realized later on that I was actually copying my mother. And but French Connection was the opposite. French Connection was all about lovely dresses and blouses and light fabric. And so I started Nikole when actually I wanted to wear, it was 10 years later, and I thought it would be interesting to design structured clothes and see if I could do that as well.
As a designer, do you find that you're drawn more during your fashion career towards the creative or the technical? Because there are some people who love the illustration and the sketching and the drawing, and there are some who are very into the manipulation of fabric, the pattern making and that aspect. Do you have a favorite part? Or?
Yes, definitely the designing, and I left the technique side to some fantastic pattern cutters, and you become a team with the technicians. And it's great. And I had the same head of patterns in both my companies, French Connection and Nikole later, who understood my sketches. I didn't have to explain. He knew exactly what to do, and we worked together maybe 40 years. And it was a collaboration that only ended when I stopped working in fashion. And it was fantastic. And I think we are not all able to understand both. So, it's wonderful if you meet the person who can be your acolyte and do that, what you don't know how to do.
So you enjoyed more of the sketching and the illustration, the hand of the fabric and sourcing.
Yeah, and design the prints and color the prints, and there's a lot to do already as a designer without. But then obviously over the years you understand how a jacket should fold, a coat, or you understand that without knowing exactly how to do it or how to cut a pattern, you understand if it works or if it doesn't work.
And still keeping in the fashion section of your career, you were one of the first fashion designers to go into homeware. Yeah. With that, was it more of an economically driven business side, or was it something you were passionate about?
Well, I was always, whenever I came to India or to China, I would go and look at antique furniture. So when I opened my first stores, I put always some wardrobes or a table or some armchairs from the past. And then people wanted to buy the chairs of the shop or the lights. So Stephen always behind me said, why don't you open a homeware store? And I said, yes, why not? And then he said, you've got all the fabrics, you can make your cushions during your travels or your bedspread. And I had already started sculpting by then. And he said, well, just sculpt your plates that we will sell, the glasses. So it was another world that I really enjoyed doing very, very much. And we opened that store in London and one in New York. And it was successful. People enjoyed it.
They were absolutely beautiful pieces. I was going through some of the images, and it still had very much your fingerprint, and beautifully done, absolutely beautiful. As you were transitioning from fashion into sculpture, the French Connection label was also going through changes, and is that something you would like to talk about this afternoon?
With French Connection, I started sculpting while I was designing, not while I was designing French Connection. When I started Nikole Farid, so it was in the 80s, I left the French Connection side. I couldn't do everything. And I was not so, I don't know exactly what happened to French Connection. It's changed style, obviously, these different designers. But they had some very good years without me, because they had this FC UK label, which became extremely, extremely successful, and which had nothing to do with me. So I was no longer in charge of the design there, and concentrating very much on what I was doing and sculpting on the side.
Could you tell us a little bit about Nikole Farid, the label and the brand, and not only the birth, but the evolution of that brand while you were also delving into sculpture?
Well, what can I say? The woman I was dressing was somebody like me, and the men I was dressing, because I was doing menswear, resembled they were tall, thin, like my husband, and his sons, so I had my models in my head. And I enjoyed making those collections in parallel, plus the homeware. But nothing compared to the pleasure I had to sculpt. And so I would take a day off work, plus my weekends, and I would sculpt in my studio at home. And I did that for many, many years, until 14 years ago, when I completely left fashion.
Looking at your career in sculpting, which you've had an amazing array of exhibitions, of showcases, completely diverse work, quite different to what you see out there from mainstream also. One of the most interesting, from like a media standpoint of getting a lot of attention, was Folds.
Oh, I'm glad you're talking about it, because I nearly interrupted the panel before to say one of my shows after I left fashion, it was the third show, was Folds, and it was about large women and the beauty of the flesh. And what nobody talked about before during that panel was flesh is beautiful. And having worked with thinner women, never a size 0 in fashion, because I refused to have skinny girls. But I wanted to look at large women and show how beautiful the ripple of the flesh can be, and how sensual and free a large woman can be. And that is one of my most successful shows. It's been really wonderful. And the large woman who sat for me, and one was Sue Tilley, who sat for Lucien Freud, and was the large woman in a few of his paintings. They all loved sitting and seeing their body in 3D, and they realized by the appeal that show had, that they didn't have to worry about their size. It was beautiful, and people who didn't see that, then you shouldn't mind. Nobody can see everything, but it was good for the people who could realize how beautiful it was.
I think it was completely wonderful because Time Out magazine in 2019 showcased your work. It was at the Museum of Beaux-Arts in London, and it's just amazing that you chose aspects of the human body as opposed to the entire body, which is classical sculpture. What made you do that?
It's something I keep doing, actually, is showing a fragment of a body. Whether I've done, my first show was about portraiture, then the second one was hands, then fold, and keep going. I always like to concentrate the point I want to make. I want the viewer to see exactly what I want to show. So if you show the whole body, people don't know what she's really saying. But if you show just a part of the body, then people do understand this is where the focus is. So I keep doing that, not consciously or not consciously. That's what I want to do. That's every time I have a show. Lately it was called Womankind, and it was about the importance of the touch and nurturing that we give to each other, to one another. So I had two women sitting for me, and what you see are the hands. The hands are very, very important, and it's how they touch the other one, and how they bring like that harmony and peace and sympathy and empathy.
Absolutely gorgeous. If I may quote Rosemary Waugh, who wrote this piece, just a paragraph, to produce her new series of sculptures based on the bodily beauty of larger women, the artist made plaster casts directly from the physiques of two friends. The recast, the results in bronze and jasmonite. One of her models was Sue Tilley, also known as the woman painted by Lucian Freud, in Benefit Supervisor Sleeping and other works. It's also been described as flesh origami, and I think it's just spectacularly beautiful that you focus, coming from fashion, where we have this very sterile clinical ideation of what the body should look like. Coming from that to showcase women in all their wonder, in all their different aspects was completely wonderful. What was the reaction, not only from the general audience, but from media and from a critical acclaim standpoint?
It was very, very well reviewed, and people really enjoyed it, and people bought the sculptures. So they got the point that I was making.
And this also says, stands close and constellation of pores and hair follicles become visible. The details you went into, doing folds, extraordinary detail. And this is artistic expression at its height. So I think for all of us who appreciate art, this is a true milestone of your creativity in sculpture. And another area was heads, which is more recent.
No, it was before. No, you're talking about the little heads.
The little heads.
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, well, I was doing, I started, so portraiture has always interested me very, very much. And I was doing, actually, most of them were larger than life. And they were portraits of painters or sculptors, and they had so much potential in them that my portraits always went out of proportion. But my husband was once, I can't remember exactly the years, but maybe 8 years ago or 7 years ago, he was writing a play, The Judas Kiss, about Oscar Wilde. And as a first night present, I made a portrait of Oscar Wilde, and I made a little bronze and I painted it, and I gave it to him, and he really was very, very happy. A year later, he did a version of The Seagull, Chekhov. He had another little head. Then he did the Master Builder, Ibsen. I made another little head. And I got the hang of it. And these little heads I could do without having a sitter. I could just go back to books to look at photographs or to websites. And I decided, I'm going to do my favorite writers. And so I started doing Simone de Beauvoir, Camus, French writers, and then Virginia Woolf, so English. And little by little, the collection grew to 30 writers, and I had a show of those little heads which are all painted. And during the COVID and the lockdown, I obviously didn't have my models and my sitters, so I thought, okay, I'm going to carry on doing little heads. And I decided to do pioneers, and I think,
yes, we have a slide presentation.
And through wonderful people who changed our lives today, and it was very, very interesting. I was learning a lot as I was doing them. I did also, and that was another 40 pieces came out after 2.5 years. Then, while I was doing my 2 women sitting for womankind, I decided to do women and also, obviously, being a feminist and being interested in women and what they've done and how they fought for who they are and who they were. I did a series of women little heads, and I had now 120 little heads. And this summer, last summer, I had a show of all those heads together, which was a wonderful, it was really nice for me to see all these heads. So this is totally different to the larger work, but it's a work that I really, really enjoy.
The Little Heads, was that at the Harley Gallery in 2023? Yeah. You led perfectly into the slides, which we have of the Little Heads, and if I may ask that we... Nikole, if you'd like to maybe speak a little bit about what you're seeing, and then we can tell them to change it.
The person is Akira Kurosawa, wonderful filmmaker, Japanese. Alan Turing, obviously, Einstein, Amelia Earhart. I mean, all these people obviously did something incredible in them. Here there are more. Anna Pavlova, who invented the ballet shoe. Anne Frank, whose books, after death obviously, touched millions of people around the world. Artemisia Gentileschi was a painter of the 17th, 18th century, Italian, one of the first women painters to sell her work. Rodin, my master. Billie Jean King, a fantastic tennis woman and feminist. Coco Chanel, I had to put somebody from the fashion world. Dante Alighieri, I mean, you know, you can go on. Jean O'Neill, Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't know if you can read the names. No. Galileo, Franklin Roosevelt, I mean, I'm not going to describe them all.
Did you have any particular characters when you were, I mean, this is such a array, it's such a spectrum.
Really, the people that have done something that interests me, obviously there are so many more inventors and great people that I haven't done yet, because this is an ongoing work, and I'm aiming, you know, till the rest of my life to have 500 or 1,000. I don't know how many years more I'm going to live, but I want to keep going, because hopefully they'll go in a museum, and you know, it's fantastic. I mean, children go already to galleries to see them because it's teaching them, the history of the world, really.
Because looking at these characters, they're so iconic, and they enrich so many parts of people's lives through their own work, through their lives, through their just being. What was your process when choosing a character? As you said, there were people that you found interesting. Did you first paint a portrait and then?
No, I don't. I work from photographs a lot. So a lot of these people obviously are dead. I look at photos, their books, I read about them. If there are interviews, I will listen to their interviews to get an idea of more who they were, and then I just touch the clay. I work in clay, and the painting is the last thing. I don't draw them. I just go straight into the clay.
Okay. Do you have a favorite?
I don't think so.
It's very difficult to choose, even for us looking at it.
I quite like Anna Arendt. I don't know if she's not here. She has a cigarette, and she's quite wonderful. But I like them all.
And they're so relevant because you see Maria Callas and the new movie that's coming out with Angelina Jolie, and these characters in our historical library. They may not be around, but they still have such an impact on us. So this is truly a wonderful collection that you've created. What's next for Nikole?
The little heads I'm doing at the moment are miscarriages of justice. And they are about people around the world who've been imprisoned, very often killed, for crimes they did not commit. So this is my next show in September. But I'm also working on a series of, what is it called? I forgot the title of my series. It's about who we are. So it's figurative. It's again the body I'm using. But the other side is abstract, and who we are inside and what we project outside. And this is taking me to total abstraction now. So, it's a journey for me, the sculpture, and it's a language that I have with people, and it's a conversation.
And it's ongoing.
And that's ongoing.
I think, as you said, just looking at underlining who we are, that alone is series upon series of your work, because you've touched on so many aspects of humanity, and we can't wait. We're looking forward to it, totally looking forward. Any particular exhibits from the many you have done, particular exhibitions that really stood out, that it was a game changer? It was something that made you maybe think, rethink, reevaluate your work?
It's funny, I think Folds was the one. When, maybe because I was showing abstraction in the body already. And I think people reacted really well to that one. And I think it's quite wonderful when you can express something without showing it, without underlining it. And I think that's why I want to do more abstract, but still it's about us. My abstraction are not going to be, lines. It's going to be us. It's always about us.
I know we're coming close to winding down before we hand over for questions. Any advice for young designers, young sculptors, not so young designers or sculptors out there who are looking at multifaceted careers, because you have lived it?
I think there are a few fashion designers who are either painters today or sculptors. I think It's not that far from, we, as a fashion designer, you do work in 3 dimensions. And you go around your work non-stop. The back is as important, the inside is as important as the outside. And so you're 2 steps away from doing a sculpture. But I don't remember their names, unfortunately, but I know there are quite a few.
Just follow your passion,
Yeah.
wherever it takes you. Thank you so much, Nikole. I'm just going to hand over if there are any questions for Nikole. There's one lady up front.